Welcome, everybody. We're really happy to have you for this exciting session around water. Today's a special day for us at H2 Innovation. We're uplisting ourselves on the Toronto Stock Exchange, but it's also a special day at the global level because it's the World Water Day, and we're ecstatic to have an extremely qualified panel here with four experts to talk about water, to talk about water technology, to talk about water strategy, and to talk about water investments. I'll go right into introducing the panel, but first, maybe let me introduce myself. My name is Guillaume Clairet. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for H2O Innovation, and today I will be playing the host and moderator for this exciting panel. With me today, I'm pleased to introduce Debra Coy, who's our water investment expert. She's been investing in water for the last 20 years. She's been associated with XPV Water Partners, the largest private equity fund in Canada solely focusing on water. She's also on the board of director of Axios Water, which is the water-focused arm of KKR, an investment fund managing over $770 billion in assets in the United States. And prior to that, she was also an equity analyst analyzing publicly traded companies for Janney Montgomery, one of the leading investment banking firm in the water sector. Debra, welcome. Second, with us today, we have Mr. Tom Pankratz. Tom is our water technology expert and guru. He works for Global Water Intelligence, and he is the editor of two important magazines, the WDR, Water Desalination Report, which is the weekly magazine that all water executives love to read. It's a weekly publication, but more importantly, he is also the editor of the CTO section, the Chief Technology Officer section of the monthly magazine of Global Water Intelligence. Prior to that, he's worked for the largest water company in the world, Veolia, and also for one of the greatest and largest engineering consultant, H2M Hill, now Jacobs. Tom, welcome to the panel today, and thank you for being here. Last but not least, Bill Malarkey, who's the managing director in North America for Aman Advisors. For the one who don't know Aman, it's a really a trendy management consulting firm solely focused in water. Again, I like to refer to them as the McKinsey of the water industry. And prior to that, Bill has spent some time amongst the largest water utilities in the world, Severn Trent and American Water, which is now worth north of $28 billion in market capitalization. Bill, welcome to our panel. And last but not least is Frédéric Dugré. Fred is a mechanical engineer by training, and he's been building H2 Innovation for the last 22 years. This success story culminated in the award of the Water Company of the Year in 2020. Frédéric, yourself, you've been named in the top 25 global water leaders on the planet twice by the Water World magazine. And probably the most important function, you also happen to be my boss. So welcome today for this interesting sessions together.
You're welcome.
All right.
Good to be
here. Introductions made. We're going to be covering 5 interesting themes around water today. The first one of which is quite close to my heart and all of our panelists, and it's around water reuse. And my first question will go to you, Bill, because it's an emerging market, and goes as follows. The water reuse seems to become a major trend, both for major industrial players and for some large municipalities and public water agencies. Could you tell our audience a little bit what you think are the main drivers causing this new focus on water reuse?
Sure, Guillaume. I think the main drivers that you see are sort of the competition for a finite resource. So you've got increased demand, and you've got a steady or even declining water supply that's out there. So you've got industrial players, like you're seeing some of the new chip companies that are chip factories that are being built in the U.S. having to put really extensive water reuse systems in place to become zero water users in order to get the permit to even build in certain areas. And you've got municipalities looking long-term at large groundwater recharge projects to try and maintain their sources of water. So a lot of it are those drivers of just needing to stretch the existing supply of water or recover degraded supplies. And secondly, and probably the more positive driver, those are kind of negative drivers forcing people. But on the positive side, technology advances have made it much more affordable and much more economically feasible to do these kind of reuse projects. So I think that's also driving the demand that we see there.
Thanks for that. And Tom, obviously water reuse is not new, but it required a lot of technologies. And I'm interested to hear from you. What are the technologies that are mostly used today to reuse water? And if you could identify some of the obvious winners that you think are truly contributing to solving that water reuse challenge, either the ones in the past or some of the upcoming technologies which are going to become game changers for the industry in the coming years.
Sure. Well, Bill pointed out some relatively high quality, some reuse applications that require relatively high quality water, particularly municipal water that many people are now starting to consider using reuse water as potable water, in some cases direct potable water. And the technologies for almost all of the applications that Bill described are very similar. They include, first of all, using a low pressure ultrafiltration membrane to get out the suspended solids or the particulates that are floating or suspended in the water. This is followed by using a tighter, higher pressure membrane and reverse osmosis membrane to get out the dissolved particulates. This includes a lot of the contaminants that may be in the water, everything from pharmaceuticals and personal care products to PFAS. The RO membranes will remove them. But finally, the final treatment step is disinfection, and that is to kill any pathogens that make it through the system. Now, each of those three processes is an effective barrier for a particular size or type of constituent. But to get it to before you can really reuse the water, you have to make sure that it's pathogen free. And in most cases, that necessitates pumping it underground into an aquifer or into a reservoir for 6 months prior to then taking it out and treating it in a conventional drinking water plant. Now, think of the money and time you'd save if you could go right from that reuse plant right into a potable water supply. The real problem with that is analytics. This is the ability to measure in real time exactly the purity of the water. So I think the game changer to all this, the thing that could make reuse much more common and practiced all around virtually every municipality, is the development of better real-time analytics. So we could continuously monitor any pathogens that make it through any of the processes due to a mechanical failure of one of the components, for instance. If we can do that, we'll really change the whole landscape of water and wastewater treatment.
That's so true. Often, the regulators will only believe in lab data, right? The data that comes from laboratories, that takes time. If you would be able to have portable labs to monitor real time, it would definitely change the world of water, and more specifically water reuse. Okay, well, so moving on to you, Debra, anxious to hear what you have to say from an investment standpoint. And the question goes as follows. It really seems that the world of investors as a whole is becoming completely transformed by the ESG standards, right? Environmental, social governance is something we hear almost every day, every week in the financial world these days. Some large corporations have started to aim at becoming water positive in the last few months. It's kind of like what they used to aim for carbon neutrality back a few years ago. So the question is, do you think water reuse is the topic of such importance that it's going to make its way to the agenda of investment committees of large institutional shareholders and or private equity investors?
I think ultimately it will. It comes back a lot to what Bill said at the beginning in terms of the drivers. Investors looking at ESG care both about the environmental side, the pollution and impact on communities, but also increasingly they're focused on water risk and the ultimate sustainability for a lot of corporations, whether everything from semiconductors, food and beverage, lots of manufacturing, energy companies. Everybody needs water for their processes. And I think investors are finally figuring out that it is a critical input, and it hasn't gotten nearly the level of attention of climate change and carbon neutrality. And there aren't yet the same level of standards for measuring how we look at water positivity or water neutrality or all the same things that they have around measuring carbon thus far. But I think it ultimately has to change. I'm surprised it hasn't changed more. I'm surprised we aren't seeing more focus on water within ESG. I think it's just on the early stages of going there, and probably food and beverage. The big Coca-Cola and Pepsi have gotten in enough trouble for overusing water in enough places that it has come to the attention of a lot more investors. So I think that's a work in progress.
Well, let's all hope that water comes next to carbon neutrality, and I think would all be happy if that happens over the next few years. So Fred, probably our last question to you to close our water reuse topic. Do you feel that H2O is well positioned to respond to all these new trends in terms of water reuse?
Well, absolutely, yes. I mean, after 22 years, I mean, what I'm hearing today from you guys is all positive things. I mean, first, to hear clear and loud that water is a finite resource, that it's not only driven by ESG trend, but driven by true needs of protecting and preserving this water, I think makes H2O positioned in a very unique way. I mean, we have built, among the largest, water reuse facility across North America. We have the largest reference install base in terms of water reuse plants. And it's nice to see, to your point, Debra, that we saw over the last couple of years an evolution going from mostly municipal, some municipalities being really early adopters and try to push the idea about water reuse for indirect potable reuse, to now seeing a greater number of industrial customers embracing this concept of recycling their water, not only for ESG purposes, but to become, as he said, more independent on their water needs and less exposed to increasing tariffs, and also becoming more and more aligned with the regulations out there, to dispose less into critical areas. So I think H2O has technologies within the portfolio, strong expertise around membrane filtration, strong reference base, and this continuous and increasing focus towards industrial customers that will certainly benefit for the future years. So I'm truly excited about the trend on water reuse, because I would say it's not only a trend now, I think it's a necessity.